the people die, while the rest of us are splitting hairs. It's a good world gone bad.
We're back with another episode of Newstalgia. This time we'll be looking at one of Microsoft's biggest exclusives, Gears of War. When I was in high school and the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were out, I had neither of the systems at launch. I was in a more casual state of mind for gaming, playing a few select titles on my PlayStation 2. I wanted to get one of the next-gen consoles, but I didn't have a job yet and couldn't afford it. Then I remember my parents asking me about which one I would want for Christmas. I was a Sony guy at this point. I had the 1 and then the 2. Naturally, buying the PlayStation 3 would have been the next step. Unfortunately, at launch, the console was very expensive, $499 and $599. The Xbox 360 was $299 and $399. Keep in mind, those prices are US, and I'm located in Canada. That was a huge price difference, and I was just happy to have a chance at getting one of the consoles, so I asked for the Xbox 360. Until this point, I had barely any experience with the original Xbox. I had played a couple of matches of Halo at a friend's house, but outside of that, I never owned one. There's one game I really wanted to play, though, for the 360, and that was Gears of War. I just remember the trailer, which featured Mad World as the background music. It felt epic and had me hooked. As Christmas was getting closer, I remember my parents letting slip that the console came bundled with a game. My hopes were really high that it was Gears of War. The moment came, and on Christmas Day I opened up my present to an Xbox 360 bundled with Viva Pinata. No, it was Gears of War, thankfully. If it was Viva Pinata, I would have been super disappointed. Once I hooked up my Xbox, I set up my account, which I still use to this day. This was actually the first time I ever used Mayu. Not for photography, not for this YouTube account. It was to make my gamer tag. Once everything was set up, I was finally able to experience Gears of War. I love the story and the characters. Barrett is my favorite character in this game, and one of my favorite video game characters of all time. I always wished he would get his own game. Be careful what you wish for. The gore and weapons just elevated the playing experience. The first time I used the Lancer to kill a locust blew my mind. The chainsaw revving and just slicing through them was unreal. Running through enemies with the Nashor shotgun felt badass. Then we had headshots with a sniper. Until this point, I was never a fan of using snipers, but just that sound of a headshot with a sniper is so gratifying. It's up there with the achievement pop-up sound for me. Honestly, I could go on about each weapon, like boom shot, torque bow, frag grenade. I just loved everything this game threw at you, and the gameplay was one of the best parts about playing through the story. Another thing I want to mention is my love for active reloading. I love being responsible for how fast and how well you reload your guns. Getting that bonus damage from perfect reloads would make or break confrontations in PvP. Speaking of PvP, Gears of War was the first time I've ever played a console game online. And just like the campaign, I loved every minute of it. I was actually pretty decent and the maps were designed very well. Gridlock will always be one of my favorite maps. The game modes were fun to play and always felt intense. I can't even say that the PvP felt fresh at the time because it was my first time actually playing a PvP game. But honestly, Epic did such an amazing job with this game. Around 2 years after the Xbox One launched, they released Gears of War Remastered. Playing through it again, I actually felt the same way I did when I first played it. When the original game came out, the graphics blew me away. When the remaster came out, I couldn't believe how much they improved it. The gameplay that I loved was still there, and more importantly, all the maps and weapons that made the online experience so much fun were still there as well. The one thing I noticed playing through the remaster was that I was missing something. In the Modern Warfare video, I mentioned having a squad of high school buddies I used to play with all the time. With the remaster, I had some friends to play with, but no dedicated squad. While the online was still fun to play, the experience just wasn't the same. When you play through the campaign, you became invested in these characters who form brotherly bonds as they have this madness thrown at them. In a way, the same could be said for the online, if you're playing with the right people. I will always love Gears of War 1, and Remastered was a perfect tribute to it. The experience may not have the same magic as the original, but it was still a blast to play. Gears of War Remastered is a must-have for the Xbox One. It's a game that started a franchise, one of my favorite franchises personally. It had gore, story, jokes, unique weapons, incredible voice acting, beautiful settings, unbelievable graphics, and the list goes on. If you don't own it yet and like third-person shooters, do yourself a favor and pick it up. This has been Newstalgia. Stay tuned for next week.